In this video, I'm going to go over the sky, atmosphere, and fog components in Unreal Engine 5. I'll be building on my Flybot project that I created in the last video. The GitHub link is in the description if you want to download it. Initially, the game is only going to exist inside of this foggy atmosphere. This is because creating a good-looking landscape with things like rocks and mountains and trees and water and cities could take a long time. I want to get a playable game running as quickly as possible. If you've ever worked in the tech world, this is what they call a minimum viable product. Once I do have a simple game that can be played, I'll continue to iterate on it and add more advanced features and content like the landscape. To set the mood for the sky, I was thinking a reddish-orange post-apocalyptic look. I recently watched WALL-E with my kids, and some of those scenes kind of reminded me of what I had in mind. First, we'll open up the project solution file in Visual Studio, and then press Ctrl F5 to start up the editor. You'll see the default level and all the actors that make up this level in the world outliner on the right-hand side. For some reason in the Unreal 5 Early Access, it still creates a default level with deprecated components, like the atmospheric fog. We'll delete this, along with the sky sphere and sphere reflection capture actors. I'm also going to disable the Skylight for now. The only visual actors that are left are the directional light source and this floor object. If we disable the directional light, you'll see we have nothing but an empty black void for our world. The floor is still there, but there's no light anywhere to reflect off of it. We need to have some kind of light, so we're going to start with this directional light. A directional light is like the sun, where it's rendered as infinitely far away and has the same intensity everywhere in the world. There are other types of lights like point lights and spotlights, and we'll use those in future videos. I'm also going to create some temporary objects so we can see what the shadows look like created from our lights and atmosphere. To add our first component, the sky atmosphere, click on Create, Visual Effects, and then Sky Atmosphere. As you can see, it looks pretty good right from the start. You'll notice that it renders the directional light we previously had as sun in the sky. I highly recommend reading the documentation. It goes into quite a bit of detail about how it works and what the options are. Simply put, it's made to mimic atmospheres of real planets. By default, it looks like Earth's atmosphere, but you can change these settings to make it look like any other atmosphere. If you click on the Sky Atmosphere actor and look in the Details panel, you'll see all these settings. If you bring the Rayleigh scattering scale all the way up, you'll notice the sky turns red and very little light is getting through. This is because it's simulating all that light getting bounced off of small particles in the atmosphere. If we bring the scale all the way down, you'll notice that we just see blackness. This is because very little light is getting bounced off the atmosphere. You'll still see some white light bouncing off the atmosphere, and this is from another type of scattering called Mie scattering. I'm going to go back to the default scale setting by pressing this Reset Properties button. You can also change the color that Rayleigh scattering affects. By default, it's this blue color like the Earth sky. But if we click on it and move the color wheel around, we can see we can make any color sky we want. As I mentioned before, I'm going to go with this orange-reddish sky. One thing I should mention is that if you don't see anything in your sky, go to the directional light actor, go down to Atmosphere and Cloud and Properties, and then make sure this first checkbox is on. This tells Unreal to use this directional light as the sun source. Without the sun source, there's no atmosphere, so the entire sky turns black, as if we didn't even have the sky atmosphere component added. The next thing we'll do is re-enable the skylight by clicking on the eyeball icon next to it in the world properties. The skylight will use the color from all over the sky and recast that as new light into the world. This is most useful for providing light into the shadowed areas. As you can see, it's not shining any light into the shadows yet. This is because you need to capture the light. There are two ways to do this. First, if you scroll down in the properties, you'll see a recapture button. When you click this, it captures the light currently in the world and recasts that as light. Now you can see the shadows have turned orange. Doing it this way is useful if you just want to set the skylight once and have it never change. But you might want to have it change dynamically as the sky color changes. For example, if we hold down Ctrl L and move the mouse down, you'll notice that we can change the sun. If we bring it down to the horizon, the sky color changes, but the shadow colors from the skylight have not changed. We can click the recapture button again, but we want it to change automatically. If you change the skylight mobility to stationary or movable, which basically tells Unreal that the light can change during runtime, and then click the real-time capture button, you'll see that it now reacts to the sky as colors change. Hold down Ctrl L again and move the sun around. You'll see the shadow colors changing along with the sky. Next, we're going to add in some fog. Go to Create, Visual Effects, and then Exponential Height Fog. As you'll see, a thick white fog appears below the horizon. The density of the fog is dependent on how high you are in the world. So as you move up in the world, the fog gets thinner. Then, as you move back down, the fog gets thicker again. Just like with the sky atmosphere, I recommend checking out the documentation to see what all the options are. The two most common ones are fog density and fog height falloff. The fog density controls how dense your fog is, and the fog height falloff controls how quickly the fog thins out as you go higher into the atmosphere. Like with many things, there's no right or wrong setting here. Just choose what feels right for your project. And there's a good chance we'll be tweaking this later on as we add some more objects into the world. Another option I'm going to change is the fog in-scattering color. This is basically the color of your fog. Instead of this light blue color, I'm going to go with more of a beige to match the reddish-orange color of the sky. Another group of options you might want to tweak are those for directional in-scattering. This controls how the fog reacts to the directional light coming from the sky. I'm going to change mine to be an orange color, so the sun creates more of an orange glow in the fog. Up until now, I've been referring to these objects as both actors and components. To be clear, they're actually both. Actors have some core functionality in them to exist in the world, but mainly they're containers for actor components. If you click on the light source actor, you'll see that it has a directional light component inside of it. You can add other components to this as well. For example, we can add a rotating movement component. This will allow the directional light, or the sun, to rotate around the sky. The sun won't rotate right away. This is because the movement happens when the game engine is ticking, and this doesn't happen in the editor. To make the game engine tick, hit the play button. You'll notice that the sun isn't moving still. If you hit escape to stop the game, a message will pop up that says the light needs to be movable. If we go back into the properties, change the light to movable, and hit play again, you'll see the sun moving. Now, this is moving a bit too fast, but it's kind of a cool effect. Let's hit escape, go into the rotating movement properties, and slow the Z-axis rotation down a bit. Setting it to 10 is looking better, but we probably want to slow it down even more. I found a good setting is about 0.5. Now when it runs, you can see the shadows moving very slowly. The other thing you might want to change with a rotating sun is the angle in the sky. You can do this by holding down Ctrl-L and moving the mouse around until you find a good starting position. Or you can change the rotation property under the light actor. I'm going to change mine to 60 degrees. I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. I've covered the basics here, but there's even more you can do when setting up your sky and atmosphere. For example, there are a few ways you can add clouds either through a plane layer, a sky sphere, or even volumetric clouds. The sky atmosphere component also allows you to see the curvature of the planet if you go high enough in the world. The documentation I mentioned earlier covers this, and there's also a pretty good video on YouTube going into detail about these features. I've linked them in the description below. In the next video, I'm going to take a closer look at Nanite, the new virtual geometry system in Unreal Engine 5. If you have any questions, be sure to ask in the comments below. Thanks for watching.